Like was said, I have several years experience. I'm a CBA, that's a Certified Business Analysis professional, and I've worked in several domains. And currently, I work in a university as a senior business analyst focused on processes. And on the side, I also help immigrants business analysis knowledge. I do that through Career Aid Hub, and we provide all kinds of trainings to immigrants that are in Nova Scotia and Canada. Um, to the topic that we are going to be, that we have on hand, I'm going to be talking about use cases, what are the symbols used in use cases, the systems, the actors, and the relationships. And I'm just going to move straight into it. So a use case is something that it's a system, that shows the interaction between an actor and a system or an application or a process. Use cases help in requirements analysis, and they tell the story from the point of view of the user itself, or the user himself or herself, and it's oriented towards the user. So, but I think I'll talk more about that as we move on. For the importance of use cases, they give, for the use case model, they give an overview of our system. Now, it doesn't talk about every single detail, but it gives you, the model gives you a pictorial view of that system. And it also gives us the context in which we are using the system. Like I mentioned earlier, you can also derive your requirements from a use case model or a use case diagram. You can also get your system, validate your system architecture, and also generate your test cases and your test scenarios from there. So it's a very powerful tool that BAs use, or it's a very powerful techniques that BAs use. There are different ways you can visualize or model a use case. You can make it textual in a tabular form, which is what I've displayed there. So you see the use case ID, you see the use case name and the number, and all the details, the description, preconditions, post-conditions, and those are the things that are that you find in the textual form. And the textual form gives you a little more detail about the use case separate from the diagram. So diagram just gives you a visual of it, but the textual gives you more details. For my own, when I develop use case models or diagrams, I try to ensure that I put both the textual description and also the model. That way, if a developer is going to pick up that business requirement document, or if I'm going to develop a story map, it's easier for the developer to understand what I'm talking about or what the user expects the system to do. Now, there are different parts of a use case, different symbols, and it's quite important that we understand these symbols, because that way you'd be able to figure out exactly what do I use at what particular time and what do I use to represent what I'm trying to pass across. So the stick man that you see there is the symbol of an actor, and an actor is anything or anyone, could be a process, could be a system, could be a database that is interacting with another system that has its own boundaries. It could be a worker, it could be a system use case is that, I don't know if I'll call this oval, but that oval shape that you see, but we'll go into detail more. And you also have different kinds of relationships. So we have the generalization, and those are the those relationships are the link between your actors and your use cases. So they are the ones that specify what kind of relationship exists between the actors and your system or the use cases. So in a use case, we have systems, and systems are represented by the boundary that you see. So if you see that the rectangle on the left, that is a boundary, and that is a boundary for a travel request use case. So you represent the boundary just by that rectangular shape. It could be by that rectangular shape, and the system could be a website, it could be a business process, it could be an application, it could be a banking app, it could be one of the ones I usually see is an ATM use case. You know, it could be almost anything that a user or an actor interacts with. But that's the symbol there. And also we have the actors, which are represented by the stick man. So the actor actually initiates the use case, and the actor provides inputs or derives output or gets output out of the system. So an actor can also be a person, an organization, another system, or external device. We'll put all these together so you see exactly how it looks. And we have two kinds of actors, or we can have two kinds of actors. We have actors that are primary actors, and we have actors that are secondary actors. So the primary actors usually initiate the action. Okay, I'm sorry, I'll correct something. I made a mistake on this slide. The primary actor is usually on the left, while the secondary actor is on the right. And the primary actor initiates the response, while the secondary actor reacts to it. So for instance, you have somebody interacting with a banking app. So the banking app is the system. The user is the primary actor that opens up the app to want to do something. So that's usually represented on the left. And anytime you try to, let's say for instance, you want to transfer funds. When you try to transfer funds, the banking app communicates with the banking system. And when it communicates to the banking system, it validates if you have enough funds and does several validations before it gives you a response. So the use case is just about the interaction. So you initiate something and the system responds back. So the bank on the right is reacting to the triggers it gets from the customer on the left or from the actor on the left. So that's just how it's represented. And also you can have several actors. You can have several actors, primary, and also several actors on the secondary side. But we'll talk more about that. For you to identify who an actor is, you could ask these questions while you're working. So who are the system's primary users who will be using this system often? Who requires system support for daily tasks? Who are the system secondary actors? What hardware does the system handle? Which other entities might have interest in the system's output? So all these questions could help you to figure out exactly who your actors are. And remember that in a project as a BA, you could have several stakeholders. So it's important to ask these questions so you can identify which actors will be which actors are necessary in your model or in your use case model. Also, we also have the use case diagrams, or the use case, the use case diagrams. And you can see it's represented by that oval shape. And that's why I put use case in there. So it represents the action that accomplishes some task within the system. So if I'm going to use an example of an e-commerce system, one of the things that a user would do is, number one, to log in. A user could also search for a product. A user could check out. Now, those are use cases. Those are broad categories of what users want to do when they engage a banking app or when they are trying to use a banking app. For an ATM, a use case could be transfer funds. So there are categories of things that the user wants to do when they are using that system or when they are interacting with that system. And I just give an example of a banking app. A use case for a banking app could be login, check balance, transfer funds. For a travel request use case, it could be create a travel request, view your travel request history. So they are just broad categories of things that a user would do when they interact with that system. So remember, we've talked about the boundaries, which is represented by the rectangle. We've also talked about the actors, which can be primary or secondary. The primary is on the left and the secondary is on the right. The primary actors initiates the trigger, while the secondary actor reacts to that particular trigger. And also we are talking about the use case models. Now to relationships. So we have several kinds of relationships in a use case, and the relationships are the things that link actors to use cases, or link use cases to use cases, or actors to actors. But we'll look at all that. So when you see just that straight line that you see is just an association. So that association usually will link an actor to a use case. I'll show you examples. And also we have the generalization relationships. So the generalization relationships is like when you have a parent and a child. For instance, you want to make payments. You can make payments using Bitcoin. You can make payments using your credit card. You can make payments using your debit card. So those are types of a broad way of making payments. So to represent those things, you can use the generalization relationship. So you have a parent, maybe a parent actor or a parent use case, and you have the child use cases, and you link them using generalization relationship. Also, you could also have a relationship between two use cases, and it is called the include relationship. I'll talk about that later. And we also have the extend relationship, and we'll go into more details on that. For the generalization, like I said, you have a parent use case, and that parent use case can be done in several ways. So you have the parent and the children. So the example is maybe you have like an end user, or like you have like a user, but there are different kinds of users. You could have a returning user, and you could have a new user. So a new user does not have any account on the system, like you are going through an e-commerce system and you're just coming for the first time. You are a user, but you are a new user. But you could have a returning users. Now you say, but why does this matter? It does matter because, for instance, if you go to an e-commerce system, some e-commerce systems will allow you to browse, select products, put it in the cart. But when you want to check out, you cannot go forward as a new user. Why? Because someone has written a use case that new users cannot check out in this particular e-commerce platform. So because the developer saw that particular use case, he designs the system to function in that way. So for you to proceed to check out on that system, you have to log in. You have to create an account and log in. That way, the system can track who is making the payment, and can also have details about you. So that's just, this is another example of generalization. So you could have a use case. Let's say you have a document management system, and one of the use cases is document editing. There are different ways to edit a document. You can edit a document by maybe annotating the document. And you can also edit a document by, let's say, you just want to take out a line and replace it with another line. So there are different ways. So both of them are still editing a document, but there are just different ways of editing a document. And you can see the registration too. There are two ways you can register, as if you are in university environment, as a non-graduate, or as a graduate person. So those are just examples of the generalization. Now for the include relationship, I'm trying to make sure that I put everything I'm talking about in the right time. So we have the include relationship. In the include relationship, Simply, what it says is that you have a base use case and you have an include use case. Now, the base use case, it is not possible for the base use case to be complete except the included use case is done or is completed. So there's a must relationship between the base use case and the included use case. And I'll give you a very typical example that we show. I saw this on a website and it really drives the message home. If there's a use case called sneeze, you cannot sneeze without closing your eyes. So that is a must relationship. You cannot log in until the system verifies your password. So login could be a base use case, verified password will be an included use case. So remember that for a use case, for a relationship to be included, it means that the included use case must happen. There's just no way about it. It must happen. And examples are to authorize a car loan, which is a base use case, a clerk must check the client's credit history. So that becomes an included use case. The other example which I just gave is to log in, which is the base use case, the system must verify your password. So that's just the simple explanation. And if you remember this picture, it just drives it home. Now, for the extend relationship is where you have, let me just go back. If you notice, for the include relationship, the arrow pointing towards the included use case, the arrow is pointing towards the included use case. It's important to note this. That's the convention. So when you have an include relationship, the arrow must be pointed, as the arrow from your linkage must be pointing towards the included use case. For the extend, the arrow must be pointing away, or the arrow must be pointing towards the base use case. And what does extend relationship mean? Extend relationship means that for the base use case to happen, the extending use case might happen. So there's a main relationship. It's optional. It is linking an optional use case to a standard or a base use case. The base use case may stand alone, but under certain conditions, its behaviors may be extended by the behavior of another use case. One classical example, if you log in, it is possible that you will get an error message, but the error message doesn't come every time that you log in. The error message only comes under certain conditions. If, for instance, you put in the wrong password. So when you have a conditional relationship between two use cases, then you have the extend relationship. And remember that the arrow points towards the base use case, unlike in the extend relationship. And this is another example, a classical example. If you sneeze, you may say, excuse me. Now, you may and you may not. You might decide you don't want to say excuse me, but there's no must relationship. There's no compulsion to say excuse me. It just depends on who you are. And for examples, if you log in, you may get a login error. That is the extend use case. And if you check out a product, which is the base use case, you may use a promotion code. If you don't use a promotion code, you can still check out. So if you have a promotion code, then you should be able to use that.
Food.
So you may use, okay, so for now this diagram just shows the include and extend together in one picture. So if you sneeze, you must close your eyes. If you sneeze, you may say, excuse me. Remember the relationship and remember the arrows. Now, uses of use case. So a use case can be used to develop functional and non-functional requirements. Remember I said can be used to develop functional and non-functional requirements. They can also be used to develop user stories. So if you're working in a waterfall environment, then most likely you are going to be documenting or drafting a business requirement document. So if you have a use case, that could help you develop your functional and non-functional. And if you are working in the agile environment, then you can use it for your user stories. That came out twice, okay? And I just gave this example again of the textual description of a use case and the displaying a use case as a diagram. Now, if you look at both, they are quite similar, but one is actually more detailed than the other. Now, I mentioned that you can derive a story map from a use case. And this is just a description of how that looks. So if you look properly, you will see the use case, which is on the left. And this use case is for an e-commerce system. So if you look at that use case, you will see a customer who is, I think I'll just move my screen this way. You will see a customer, and the customer engages the system by registering. The customer could register for an account. The customer could also log in. The customer can browse for clothes. The customer can view clothes. The customer can check out, and the customer can also make payment. If you look at the actors on the left, as the customer, is broken down into two. You have a visitor and you have a registered user. So, and if you look at the relationship, then you will see the generalization relationship there between that particular actor. So an actor, a customer could be a visitor, and a customer could be a registered user. So you see those two actors pointing towards the base actor, who is the customer. And also, let's move forward to the browse for clothes. So you look at the use case browse for clothes. You see that there's a relationship between the use case browse for clothes and add to shopping cart. That relationship is an extend relationship. And the reason is because you can browse for a clothes and decide not to add that cloth to the shopping cart or add that product to the shopping cart. So you see that main relationship. And you also see that the arrow is pointing towards the base use case, which is browse for clothes. So it's very important to note that. Also, if you look at the base, use case view clothes, you will see that view clothes and add to shopping cart also have an extend relationship. And that is because I can view clothes and decide that, or I can view a product and decide that I'm not going to add it to the shopping cart. So it's an optional relationship, and that is why you see that extend. Now, if you look at register for an account, so a new customer comes and the new customer registers for an account. When you register, when you are done registering for an account for this particular website, you know, when you go in and you register an account, immediately you are done registering, it automatically logs you in. And that is why you will see that there's an include relationship between register for an account and login. But there are some websites that there is no relationship. Immediately you register for an account, it will send you an email. When you get the email, it will ask you to click on a link on the email to validate that that user is you. When you have done that validation, then you can open the login page and log in. In that particular case, the include relationship would not work. But for this website, whoever user or business analyst worked on this website, the idea is that when you create an account, immediately the user is done creating the account, he must be logged in. So I brought that scenario here so that you see that what you design or what you put in your use case is exactly what the developer is going to do. So there has to be some level of engagement with the business to validate, to ask the business, is this what you really want? Is this what you want to represent? Do you want your customers to create an account and log in, or do you just want them to just log in directly immediately they are creating an account? But I just wanted to show that there. Another thing is, if you look at the make payment, you see that there are different ways to make payment, and you can make payment using a credit card, or you can make payment using a debit card. That is the generalization relationship towards there. Now, moving to the story map. The story map is on the right. And if you look at the story map, you will see the various activities, the task, and the subtask. Now, if you compare your activities, you will see that those activities map to your base use cases. So you will see browse for clothes, which is also one of your base use cases. You will see compare clothes. You will see shopping carts. You will see manage account, and you will see make payment. So you will see that there's a comparison between them. And that's because even though there are two separate techniques, you can derive your story maps from your use cases. They're separate techniques, but they have a relationship, and you can look at a use case and develop your story map. Now, that depends on the environment that you're working in. But if you are working in an agile environment, if you are working in a waterfall environment, most likely you'll be drafting a business requirement document. For a business requirement document, you can also develop your requirements from a use case. The same way a technical specialist will look at a use case and know exactly what the business wants him or wants, what the user wants. So if you look at these two, you notice that we have three kinds of actors, which are on the left, and they interact with the system in several use cases like login. This is a travel use case, travel request use case. You can log into the system. An actor can create travel requests. An actor can cancel travel requests. An actor should be able to submit a travel request. An actor should be able to view travel request history, approve travel requests, disapprove travel requests, and return travel requests. Now, for the login, you can also see that there is a relationship between the login and verify password, and that relationship is the include. I've talked about that before. And there's also a relationship between login and display login error, and that is the extend relationship. Now, if you're going to write this in a business requirement document, definitely remember that a requirement needs to be smart. It means it needs to be specific, measurable, and a requirement needs to be unambiguous and as minute as possible. So these use cases, if you are going to write a requirement, to be broken down into more details so that you can remove any form of ambiguity. So whoever is going to use that requirement will know exactly what you want to do and develop the system to function in the way that it provides maximum value to the business. Now, value to the business is subjective and is relative, but if a BA does its analysis properly, then you should be able to get exactly what this user wants and how they want the system to function. So if you look at this, you see that there's a 1.1 for your requirements. 1.1, you will see the login section, and that kind of has a relationship with your base use case. So you can look at your use cases, and from it you can derive and flesh out your requirements, whether it's functional or non-functional requirements. Now, for the login, it says the system shall require users to enter their domain username and passwords. 1.2, the password shall not be displayed on screen when the user types it in. So you can see that from the login, we are able to flesh out the requirements, break it down to a smallest unit. So there's no ambiguity and everybody understands what you're talking about. And from these requirements that are written, you can also develop your acceptance criteria. I mentioned that in the last training that I did, which is also very critical. Now, someone asked, why should they be doing your acceptance criteria? Now, it depends on the environment where you work in. If you don't have a testing practice that is very mature, or you are working somewhere that you are the BA, you are the PM, and you are the tester, I think it's just wise to just learn how to do it and just include it with your document. Moreover, even if your testing practice is mature, having your acceptance criteria in your business requirement document helps you for traceability. I'm sure we all know about requirements traceability matrix. It helps you for your traceability. And personally, I feel that the requirements traceability matrix, the business analyst is accountable for it. So if you have all this in your business requirement, it makes life easier for everybody and what they are doing. So you also see that 2.0 is talking about the requester, which is an actor, which is represented in the use case. You see that 3.0 is talking about the supervisor and what the supervisor can do. You see that in the use case too. Then 4.0 is talking about the finance manager and all that the finance manager can do. So my point in putting this here is just so that you can see that from your use case, you can derive your requirements, and from your requirements, you can derive your acceptance criteria, which helps you with your test plan and your test cases. Okay, so for the 2.0, I'll just go a little detail. It says the requester shall have the ability to. So you see, the requester shall have the ability to create a travel request, which is our base use case, which is one of our base use cases, submit a travel request, which is also one of our base use cases, cancel a travel request, and view the status of a travel request. This requirement document is a lot longer than that, but for sake of the training that we are doing, I didn't want to deviate too much from what we wanted to talk about. So I just shortened it as much as possible. But I hope that this shows that you can also derive your requirements from your use cases. Now, so I try to put example of certain use cases here. So this is a pre-travel use case. And there, I think I showed this example before. We also have a banking app where we have an actor, a customer, and we also have a bank, and the bank is the secondary actor. We also have the customer can transfer funds, which is a use case, and a bulk of all that is being validated by the bank. So you can't transfer funds until the bank has done a validation that you are a customer and you have enough funds. You cannot make payments until the bank has been able to validate it. But if you look at the login is not doing any validation at the back end. And that is because we're not talking about a website or a banking website. We are talking about a mobile application. And usually, sometimes it's not like that. Usually, when you have done some of your login, the banking app retains some of those logins. So when you try to log in a second time, the validation is done on the app and does not necessarily validate from the banking system or the database of the bank. And that is why you see there is no link between login and the bank. So most apps work this way. It's possible some other apps validate with the backend, but that all depends. Okay, so for this, I think I'll stop for this. I actually wanted to do a quick demo if I have the time. So I think I'll just quickly do that quick demo for us. For use cases, you can use Visio, if you have Visio. If you don't have Visio, you can use, there's an application I like to use. It's called Lucid Chat. So with Lucid Chat, you can build some of your banking applications, or you can build some of your use cases. Sorry for that. So let me move this tab here. Escape. And sorry. Okay. Okay. Okay, so let me just do a quick one for us so you see what I'm talking about. So this is Lucid Chat if you have an account. So I'm going to quickly create a blank document. Create document anyway. So minimize. So I just want to change it to portrait, so it's not convenient for me. I hope you can see my screen properly. Admin, is my screen showing properly?
Yeah, your screen is showing.
So, okay, great. So, so what I'm doing is that I just want to select the use case diagrams. That's what I'm just doing right now. So I have it in my tab readily. Taking this off. So the first thing I do is to drag my container, which is my boundaries. And it doesn't have to be portrait or landscape. It just depends on what works for you. But yes, so let's say I'm doing the banking app. So I'm going to have two actors. I'm going to pick one of the stickman, put here, pick another stickman, put here. Customer. And I'll name the use case. Banking app. And the validation or the secondary actor is the bank, which reacts to the triggers from the customer. And now I'm going to put my use cases. My first use case is to, remember it's a banking app, and usually on the banking app, you cannot create accounts. Usually you create your accounts in the bank, not on the banking app. So I'm not going to have create account here. If I was building an e-commerce use case, I might have create account. So the first thing I'll do is log in. Another thing I could do on the banking app is to check balance. And one other thing I would like to say is that when you are naming use cases, it is always best to use the convention of a verb noun. So check balance, create account, not balance checking. So it is a verb noun, not a noun verb, or not just a sentence. So it has to be a verb noun. And what that does is that it helps the developer or whoever is looking at that document to understand exactly what you're talking about very easily. So that's usually the convention. Use verb nouns, not noun verbs or any other thing. Another thing you could do on the banking app is to transfer funds. But I think I'll limit it to this. Then, so these are our base use cases. For login, anytime you log in, the system verifies your password. Verifies your password. Now, the relationship between the base use case login and the other use case is the include, because your passwords must be verified anytime you try to log in. So I'm going to put that relationship. I'm going to make it straight. Broken lines, and I'm going to include. So that's the relationship. Now, anytime you also log in, if you put in the wrong password, you should get a login error. So display login error. And the relationship is broken. Yes, and like I said, the relationship is extend. Now, one of the rules is that your arrow for extend must be pointing to the base use case. So what I have here, I have to point the arrow in the other direction. So this shows what is supposed to happen. So I'm creating an association between the actor and the base use case login. I'm also creating an association between the actor and check balance. I'm also creating one to transfer funds. Now, for you to transfer funds, there has to be a validation from the secondary use case or the secondary actor, which is the bank. So I'm creating that relationship too. You can do all this with Visio, or you can also do it with Lucid Chat. Okay, fine. So I'm going to add one more use case for maybe you are trying to make payments. I'll just add one more to make payments just to show generalization for use cases, not for actors. So make payments. Time. So you can make payments from your credit card, or you can make payments from your checking account or your credit card. Or so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put in two more child use cases. The first one will be credit card or checking account, sorry. And the second one would be from credit account. So I'm creating a relationship between them and the base use case. That's sharp. So remember that when you are creating relationship between child use cases and parent use cases, the arrow must point towards the parent and not towards the child. Okay, so that's just a quick demo of how you can create a use case using Lucid Chat. So I think if there are any questions, let me know. I wanted to stay between the 1 hour mark, so I didn't want to say any other extra thing. So thank you, Administrator.
Harry, I think most people on this session will agree with me that you can go ahead till 9 o'clock.
Facts.
I'm sure I can get some support on the chat.
I mean, the questions are rolling in, and I'm sure people are engaged. So trust me, I'm pretty sure if you wait for another hour, people will sit down here and want to, because everyone wants to learn. So it's been a nice class. Thank you again, Harry.
So if there are still some things you still feel it's important, you can go ahead and we can put a stop at it at probably 10 past.
Okay. So the only other thing I think I might have loved to talk about more is on the textual. Let me make this bigger. It's on how to display your use case in a textual form. So I'll just go through the headers. So you have, for this particular use case, is for a document management system. And this document management system also does OCR. So OCR is just the optical recognition. So there are several document management systems. I think you can use SharePoint, and there are other ones. And like, I think LinkText also does it. So you find out that your use cases, like the other example I gave for the banking app, there is a use case for login. You could number them, so that could be number one. Transfer funds could be another. So just the best practice is to number your use cases. And when you are describing them in the textual form, you can see use case ID 1. So use case ID 1 is talking about document processing. So you have a document management system where you scan a document, the document comes in, you index the document, or the system does OCR to read all the prints on the system, on the particular document, and stores them. You can see that there's an include relationship between document processing, and anytime you do document process, you enter specific characters, you scan the document, and you store the document. So you can see use case name, which is document processing, created by, I don't talk about that because it's very obvious what that is. Who are the actors? So the actor here in this particular case is the administrator. And you have a description. So the administrator is the only team who participates in document processing. Here they can scan documents. The scanned documents are read as images. Finally, the read documents are stored in applications. Preconditions. So the preconditions are things that must happen before this use case, can come into effect or can be triggered. So for an administrator to scan a document into the system or to process a document, he has to first be able to access the website of the application or whatever it is. There are different document management systems, but that person must be able to access that website, and the link must also be accessible. So that is a precondition. Now, some preconditions for some use cases are dependent on other use cases. So for the precondition, you could say that for this use case to be triggered, use case 3 has to have happened. So that is one of the reasons why you need to populate your preconditions field. Now, your post conditions are what must happen after this use case is complete, and that's an example there. What is the normal course? So you give a short description of what the user will do. Remember that use cases are from the point of view of the user, not from the technical person, but from the user interacting. So let's say, for instance, you go to a photocopy machine, you go there, you open it up, you put a document, you cover the lid, and you photocopy or whatever. So that's an interaction between an actor and a system. But for IT systems, there's usually a response. So you call and the system answers in a certain way. So what are the post conditions? What must happen when this use case is done? Okay, yes, I was talking about the normal course. So what does the user do? The administrator scans a document which he wants to edit. The scanned documents are read as images. Finally, the images that are read are stored in an application. And this is not just any example, because a lot of companies are doing business process reengineering, and maybe they have a lot of paper trails or paper documents flying everywhere, and they are looking for a way to streamline their process or improve their process, and they want to completely eliminate paper documents. Or they have paper documents and they want to digitize those paper documents. So a document management, this exactly describes what a document management system will do. Now, what are the alternative courses? In this case, there's none. Are there exceptions? You need to also note that down. What are the included use cases? And if you look at this one, you can see that the included use cases are scan document and store document. So I'm putting into textual form what the diagram or what the model is saying. Also, you could have the frequency of use, you could have your business rules, you could have special requirements, assumptions, you could also have constraints and also issues. So this is the only thing I think I wanted to just explain further for anyone that is hoping to use this tool sometime in the future. So admin, thank you.
Gabiola, you're on mute.
Thanks, Chris. Sorry about that. So thank you, Harry. It's been one of those nights. You can continue like this. Nobody will complain. Anyway, we have a lot of questions already in the chat.
Yes.
Chris will do justice to those, and at some certain point, we'll keep it open for people to ask questions directly. But let's just start off by those that we have currently in the chat section.
Yeah. So thank you again, Oga Harry. I think the first question, because I saw the Lucy chart and I needed to ask, is that an open source app or?
Yeah, it's free. It's free, but you can only create a certain amount of documents on it. So maybe after 5, you have to pay, but this is free.
All right, cool. So folks, so the Harry has said it is free. So the first question I think I have here came earlier on. And it's in regards to, so Christy E was saying, can a use case be employed for a detailed process description? The common use from experience is between a user and an application, mobile or web.
Yeah, you can use it to describe a process, but I would prefer, it depends, I'll prefer a process map or a swim lane to describe a process. But if you are trying to, let's say, for instance, a process, you are describing a process as a system and how individuals interact with that particular process, you could describe it in that sense. But from my experience, to be best to use a process map or other forms of techniques to describe the flow of activities. Now, if it is how the user is interacting with the process, you could use a use case. But if it is, you want to see the detailed flow of activity in a process, it is wiser to use a process map to visually express that.
So let me go a step further with regards to us being in the Canadian market. If you were that Canadian interviewer and they were asking you, isn't that what you're talking about using the process map? Wouldn't that be more of the
Yes, if I want to document the process, I will use a process map. I will also use something called in Lean Six Sigma called SIPOC. So what SIPOC does is that it shows who my suppliers are, it shows my input, my output, my customers. So that gives me a high level description of my process and the value proposition for that particular process. I could break that SIPOC down into a process map. If I have multiple functional units that has different roles to take, then I'll use a swim lane to describe that. Now, but it also still depends on what you are trying to say. So if it is a detail of the flow of activities, use a process map and a SIPOC. If it is how the user interacts with the process as a system, then you can use use case. But I would prefer to defer to using a process map and SIPOC to describe a process than using a use case.
Thank you for that. I think Roland Oposio asked the question. He said, because of the scenario you were talking to, he said, does the business allow for guest purchases? I think that first description you were looking at, the first diagram you were looking at where there was a purchase going on. And I think there was this.
Yeah, so like I was saying, I can't find that exact one, but like I was saying, it all depends on what requirements that you got, the requirements that you documented from your business stakeholders. So what I just displayed to you is the way this particular business stakeholder wants his business done. Some other business stakeholder might, and these are valid questions that you can ask your stakeholders when you are doing your interviews, your chat session, or your document analysis, or you are relating with your business, you are trying to validate a requirement. There are valid questions that you can ask, but what I just displayed to you is not a standard.
Okay.
It is just the way this business wants theirs done.
So hope you get that, Roland. Another question here is it a must to develop a use case before the BRD?
Well, you know, the use case is high level.
Yeah.
The use case is high level. So, and for me personally, one of the first things I do is to write down my business objectives, which usually I will get from the PM, or if I'm the PM, I will get from other documents. The second thing I like to do, if it's appropriate, is to do a sketch of my use case. Okay. Usually, developers don't really like those details. So when they see a use case, it makes their life easy. And for me, I don't care whether it's my work or not my work. I just want to make sure that there's no ambiguity. You understand what I'm saying. So if I'm going to treat you like a 2-year-old, just for you to understand what I'm saying, if it uses all the back and forth with the customer and with the developer later on in the project, so that waste of time is completely eliminated because I have broken it down as a use case. I have broken it down as high-level objectives. I have my functional and non-functional requirements, and I also have my acceptance criteria. So if we have interactions, fine, it's just for me to validate one or two things, but not for me to go and start recorrecting the documents I've made. So it is not a must, but personally, I try to do my use case because it's high level, and from it, I can derive my requirements a lot easily.
Sounds good.
That answers the question.
Yeah. Another question I have here is from Greg. So he asks, who is responsible for providing the acceptance criteria, and how do you link it with your case, with your use case? I think you spoke about this, but.
Okay, so the acceptance criteria is a validation that you get from the business. So the business analyst is both accountable and responsible for that, because the acceptance criteria is derived from your requirements. So what acceptance criteria is just saying that what does the business want to see for them to agree that this solution can move to production? So that's your acceptance criteria.
Mhm.
And I believe it is the responsibility of the business analyst to draft that in your requirements document. Now, the tester will take that and use that to develop his own test scenarios, test plans, and test cases. But at the end of the day, you have provided them enough information for them to be able to do a good job.
Mhm.
So if the tester comes to me and say, oh, I tested 25, whatever, 25 test cases and 24 passed and 1 failed, I want to look at my acceptance criteria. What is the criteria for this thing to move to production? What if that 1 test case that failed is linked to my highest valued requirement? And that is why requirements are prioritized. So if that one that failed is linked to my high priority requirement, and your acceptance criteria will say it, that 100% or whatever percentage of high level requirements must pass, and at least 25% of low level requirements must pass for this solution to move to production. So when you give me those test cases, I will relate it to my acceptance criteria. And if it doesn't correlate, if it doesn't work, then I'm sorry, this cannot go. It's either you have to send these defects back to the technical guy to fix this defect. Because at the end of the day, using my requirement traceability matrix, if this test case fails, then my high level requirement has failed. And the business is not going to accept that. So I believe that the acceptance criteria is the responsibility of the business analyst. And that is a validation you get from the business stakeholder. And they are those that they own the solution. So they tell you that we are not going to go to production until we see this. And I think I'm overflogging that issue. So drop that there.
No, but I think it's been understood, right? I mean, Greg, you asked this question. So if Mr. Harris is telling you, I mean, he's stressing the point of where is what you're asking about. So I hope you get that part. I have another question here, Mr. Harry, from Pascal. In a system with about 7 modules, manage user, manage task, manage workflow, etc. Under each module, under each modules, there's different actions. Is it advisable to use the use case diagrams to show the high-level interactions?
A system has different modules.
Yeah. So in a system that has 7 modules, which is manage user, manage task, manage workflow, etc. Under each module, there's different actions. Is it advisable to use the use case diagrams to show the high-level interactions?
Yes, I can. It's just unfortunate. I didn't. Sorry, I didn't plan for that. But you can. So if you look at this particular use case here, is documents. They are processing a document, but you also have different components or different use cases for a document management system. You could have. I think I have one, so I don't. You could have other use cases for a document management system. Now, even if you are sectionalizing it, you should have a use case that sums up everything that, as in you should have a use case diagram that lists all the various modules, and in your use case narrative, which is the textual one, you should have those details there. Then in your requirements, you can now break it down. Now, the use case narrative will fly, but the use case narrative does not meet the rules of what a requirement should be. A requirement should be smart. It should be unambiguous. It should be specific. It should be measurable, testable, and all that. So, but the use case narrative does not completely meet that. That is why you need to break. And your acceptance criteria is not linked to your use case narrative, it is linked to your requirements. And your testing is also linked to those requirements. So you can use it to show the high level diagram. I'm a detailed person, so I just like to treat the other party like, I'm not saying this in an insulting way, but like a 2-year-old, break it down so that there's no excuse for, oh, I didn't understand, or I thought you were saying. No, what I'm saying is very clear, because at the end of the day, I like to get it first the right time. Or I like to get it right, the first time. I don't like rework because there is a cost to rework. So as much as I can avoid rework, I just avoid it. So I try to break it down as much as possible. I hope that answers the question.
I hope so too. Speaking on the login, because some form of password validation is done, is it necessary to include that step? Because when a wrong password is typed, the user still receives notification to retry. I think that was in regards to that the first item you're talking about.
Yes, but I don't understand the question.
So I think it was talking about logging in, right? It said
yes.
Because some form of password validation, right? So
yes.
Maybe you need a setting is done. Isn't it necessary to still include that step? Because when a wrong password is typed, the user still receives a notification to retry.
Yes, that will not reflect here, because I remember I tell you that the use case is high level.
Yeah.
That will reflect in your requirements.
Okay.
So what kind of error message, what kind of scenario? Remember that the extend use cases are optional, or they don't always happen. Let me not say optional, they don't always happen. So, but your requirements will tell you in what particular scenario will trigger your extend use case. So in this particular stuff, what error message will be delivered, what will trigger that error message and all that, but those should be in your requirements, your detailed requirements under your functional or your non-functional requirements. You can't display everything on the use case.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
So another question from Mutiyat. What's the difference between use case and process map? I think you broke it down, but if you still want to explain, because I know you explained that.
If you anyone, but I think I've spoken about that.
Yeah. Okay. How do we determine how many use cases to develop in a project? Is there mathematical or
no? There's no mathematical formula for that. It depends on your users.
Yeah.
It depends on your experience. It depends on best practice. So for a business analyst, you are supposed to be you are not just engaging the business users and analyzing and trying to elicit requirements. You should also be an informed business analyst. So you've done your research, you've done your document analysis, you've read wide, you understand the industry, you have knowledge of the industry. So when you are engaging your business users, you can throw to them questions that they've not thought about. So there's no formula to it, but you just have to think of as many scenarios as possible. And in your relating with them, they say, I want this function, I want the system to be able to do that. Remember that use case from the user's perspective. Immediately you hear, I want to be able to do this. How do I categorize that stuff? That becomes a use case. So there's no formula. I'm sorry, I wish there was one.
Another question from Munachi. Is it mandatory to include a child use case if applicable to a diagram?
Oh, yes, I think so. Because if you are saying I'm making payments and somebody is designing a statement, and I have 3 bank accounts in that, maybe in TD, I have my checking, and I say make payment. What you have just done is that you create that ambiguity, because the developer begins to say, okay, you want to make payment from where? Or you have a new customer, you have a returning customer. A new customer, a returning customer have certain things they are permitted to do on the system. So it is always as much as you can break it down is always important. Now, I've explained in terms of use cases, and I've explained them in terms of the actors too. So it's important, like I said, not too much detail, but enough detail for the person to understand what you're saying.
All right. Another question. At what point do we collect information for use case? Is it the same time we elicit for the BRD?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Remember that your engagement with the business is not a one-off thing. What depends on your relationship with the business. There are several verification is done by you, but there are several validations that you do, engagements, just to be sure that you corrected the right thing. So my advice, first of all, do your document analysis. That's the first I do. If I am starting a project, I don't just talk to the business and some business. I remember the stakeholder communication grid, where you have different kinds of stakeholder. You have their influence and their interest. The stakeholder influence and interest grid. If you are talking to the director, you don't want to be having a daily meeting with the director trying to elicit. They don't have that time. If you are talking with a user, they can afford you that time to do that. So, and that is why that stakeholder analysis is very, very important. It gives you an idea of your stakeholders, how frequently you should communicate with them, and what kind of information they are expecting in that particular project. So I think that should have answered that question.
All right. Momo, I think Mr. Harry already answered the differentiate between use cases and process mapping.
Okay,
and it's going to be in this recording still, so please check it when it's out. So another question from Sheyi, please, is use case fundamentally the first thing when developing the BRD?
No. So when developing the BRD, I wish I had one. When developing the BRD, the first thing you should have there is understand your stakeholders, especially those that are going to review and approve that document. You should have your high-level objectives for that particular project, because it's that high-level objective that will be broken down to for your use case and will be broken down to your functional and non-functional requirements. Another thing you should have there is your current state analysis and your future state analysis. Then in your current state analysis or your future state, then you can have your use case and you can break it down from there.
Okay.
But it's not the first thing, because remember that you are going to derive your use case from your high level objectives for that particular project. So those kind of things should be first. And also your acceptance, your assumptions and constraints. They also impact what your use case will be like. So you should have your assumptions and constraints after your high level business objectives. Now, what I'm saying is not a set rule. It's just the way I do it. So please don't quote me that absolutely. I said it must be done this way.
Understood, Mr. Harry. Another question here from Kenny A. How do you represent the other business rules that define the use cases captured? Yes. Are there other UMLs for such?
Yeah, there are other UMLs, but for me, in my BRD, I have a section for business rules, textual. So I list my business rules there, and if I have a business rule that becomes a constraint, I also represent that in my constraint or in my assumption, depend on where it falls in. But I have a section for my business rules because those ones impact what your requirements are going to look like. In terms of a technique, I think there's one, but for simplicity, I just include a business rule table in my BRD, and I relate it to my requirements.
Yeah, and it's not that standard, but that's what Mr. Harry does. So
yes, that's
please understand.
Because there are so many techniques.
Yeah,
there are so many, and not every business analyst uses all the techniques. There are techniques that some of us are, we prefer. Some other people prefer some other techniques. So I know a couple of techniques that work for me, and I just defer to them.
All right. I think one question here from Bertrand. How do I derive test cases from from use case to arrive at required results for the product performance and user acceptance test results.
Now, remember that your test cases are derived from your requirements. So don't jump from the use case to the test case. But if you are working in an agile environment, then relate it to your story map. So derive your test cases from your requirements or derive them from your story maps, not from your use case, because like I said, use case is high level. I don't know if that.
Hopefully that answers the questions. Another question from Roland came again. He said, in developing use cases, do we need to always develop the alternative flows for each basic flow?
Yes, I think so. I think you should, but I didn't go into that much detail in my analysis, but you also need to, because you need to figure out all the possible scenarios. So figure out what your happy path is, and figure out scenarios that, like for instance, the display login error, that's not a happy path.
Yeah.
So you need to think of all those scenarios and also document them. So the system is designed in a way to respond to that. But for me, I include those in my requirements. So they are clearly listed in my requirements on what the exceptions are. Also, if you remember in the use case detail that I showed you, there's a section for exceptions. Yes. So you can populate those exceptions. And those exceptions are the scenarios that do not follow your happy path.
Okay. I'm gradually coming to the last few questions. I have one here from Titi Lokbe. Can you include or extend use cases? Okay, so can include or extend use cases also be a standalone based use case can it stand on its own?
No.
Okay.
An extend use case and an include use case must be linked to a base use case. It can't stand on its own, because an extend use case is an optional use case that happens in particular cases. So, but what is that case exactly? That case is the base use case. And include use case must happen if something happens, and that thing that must happen is the base use case. So they really can't stand alone.
All right. And my final question from Christy here is, you get to some projects where documentation is really poor. What does that BA need or level to understand? Okay, I think what they are trying to ask is, so I get to a point where documentation is really poor. What does the BA need to do or level of business need to understand in order to ask the right questions?
Now, do you remember that if you check the maturity matrix or capability, there are different maturity levels. So if you are working in an environment where maturity is 0 or 1, it is not wise to jump to 5, because you are not just going to be stressing yourself out, you are going to stress everybody working with you out. So it is wise to check, okay, what is the next level? Okay, we have ad hoc processes. Okay, can I move it to the next level, or just figure out where they are? So somewhere where there's no documentation, then you don't want to be doing excessive documentation, because when they see the document, they won't even read it because they are used to, so document, or maybe start with Agile. So they see value, then you can now put some documentations, alongside. But please don't jump from level 1 to 5. Someone is going to tell you at that workplace that you are stressing me out. You are really stressing me out. And these stakeholders, you need them tomorrow. So you don't want them to see you and just like, no, this person is going to disturb me. So I think it's just wisdom.
Thanks, Oga Harry. So I think one question folks were asking here was is there anywhere supposed to get like write-ups? Do you have anything online where we could, read up more on you, or do we need to reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yes, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and you can send me a message or call me, or I'm open and free. there's something maybe you want me to, something I didn't say correctly and you want to correct me, just call me.
I don't think. Okay, so Biola, let's open up the session, right? If anybody has any questions, am I right? So please keep it short. Let Oga Harry answer you. We have Oga Harry at least for the next couple of minutes. So please, if you want to ask any questions, do they need to raise their hands or come online and have a conversation with Mr. Harry?
Let them just kindly just unmute yourself, ask your question quickly, and then Harry can help us provide the answers to it. Who is going first? Unmute yourself, please, if you have a question, and then we'll take it.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy. We've been asking questions all day, so come online right now. Come on.
The shy people had already, dropped their questions in the chat. Let those not shy come up now. I hope Harry is not scaring anyone.
I'm like you, flesh and blood too. I'm not an angel, so.
Well,
going on.
I don't think anybody. I mean, they're asking about documentation. So, Mr. Harry has said that you can reach out to him. He's on LinkedIn. If you need to, please reach out to him. Someone says he's unable to unmute. Olarinwaju,
Okay.
one second.
All right. You
can unmute. Hello, Harry.
Hello.
Yeah, so I asked the question with respect to poly and not having documentation in a project environment. I like your response, but I don't think I'm satisfied. As a BA, you get into some environment where you need to do some work and understand the business domain. What I'm referring to there is that you need to do your document analysis, like you said rightly, but then sometimes you get to a place you don't have documentation, you can't even read. There's nothing for you to analyze. You have to start documents even for current state. I'm presently working on a very complex project. It's for a crown corporation. Don't just want to mention where. And it's a transformation project. I took interest because it was use cases. And thanks for the work. So how would you approach that? These stakeholders are steeped in their ways. They've been there for a very long time. And by the time you start speaking with many of them, you get these roadblocks at times. So either you're using your soft skills to, get to work with the users directly. So how do you handle that scenario? That's one. So let's pack that. Two, because I'm working on a very complex project. I am also thinking of how use cases help me flesh out my functional processes. I know you've talked about SciPoc. Sometimes those SciPocs don't really do the work for me. So I just want you to help me with these two questions from your experience. You get into a project environment and you need to do some document analysis too. For complex projects that involves deep processes, how would you handle that? Thank you very much. Nice presentation too.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the question too. Nice questions. For the first one, I think from what you said, it's already answered. It's a lot more about your soft skills. So number one, you said there are no documents, so you can't even do document analysis, or there are not enough, there's not enough information. So it means you have to get that information is residing in stakeholders, and I worked on a project where, I was assigned some stakeholders, and anytime I go towards this person, there's this hesitation, I have something to do, I'm going somewhere, and the meeting is for 1 hour, but 15 minutes or 10 minutes, this person wants to leave. So I really couldn't figure out what was going on. So fortunately, I met the person in one of the coffee rooms, and we just got talking about Canada and all that. I was like, just flowing. I was like, I just wanted to know, for this particular project, are you having any issues? Is there anything you think I should know that will make life easier for you? I just brought it out, not in the not on a seat, but somewhere else in a very casual environment in the office. And, she told me that, the problem we're having is that, this transformation, we feel that when they are done, people are going to lose their jobs. I was like, no, no, no. Nobody's going to lose their jobs. The reason why we are going through this transformation is to, you have a lot of things to do, but you are burdened down with tasks that just keeps repeating itself. And there are a lot more value adding things that you can do. So I want to take out those things that are those things that we can automate, and leave you with the things that a human can do that, will add value so that you can even meet your KPIs. I asked her that your KPIs, how long have you met them? And, and she saw the truth about what I was talking about. And the next time I went to her seat, we were able to, we related better, and she was able to give me the information that, I wanted. So it's just your soft skills, your letting them understand the value that you are bringing. I am not here to take your job, or I'm not just here to waste your time. I am here to make life easier for you. I'm here to make your job better. I'm here to ensure that in a short amount of time, you can produce more value. I'm here to ensure, that I free up those things that, are taking too much of your time so you can focus on what is important. So the soft skill is just important. And also your stakeholder analysis is also important. So engage the PM. If there is a PM, engage the PM, engage your senior colleagues, and they can give you information. There are some stakeholders that are just, there's almost nothing you say, they are not interested. But there are some other ones that, they have high interest in what you are doing, and they can help you, engage some of these people that are very resistant, to your project. So keep your eyes down, be vigilant, use your soft skills a lot. And that's why in Canada, soft skills are far more rated than hard skills. Use them and engage this. But I'm sure you should be able to get a headway. Now, for the other question, now, I was so engrossed in this first question, I can't remember the second one. So, and if you help me with whether I should still go on with the second question, I can't remember it right now.
I think he already answered the first question himself.
Yes, yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
Thank
more
you, Harry.
about,
Fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I will connect with you on LinkedIn. Cheers.
Yes. Oh, yes. Other tools that you can use to document. I think that's what you said. But we can always talk.
Yeah, I want to correct you.
Yeah, please do. I'm very open to that.
So the correction I have for you is that the package you brought tonight is too excellent.
Now you scared me.
I just want to appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
As in, I love the approach. I love the way you broke everything down, and the soft voice, the way you're dishing it out, the thing just enter, they set you.
Thank you so much.
So I really want to appreciate you. It was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's my correction.
Thank you. I'm grateful. I like this kind of corrections. Please, more should come.
oh yeah, well, the floor is open for correction feedbacks. Oh yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ari, for the session. I have a question. So on the use case, so I don't know what you called it, the secondary use case, I'm not sure if that's the term, the ones that do include and exclude. What if that use case to the actor interact has an association with it? Is it possible to also represent, can it double as a base use case and also as an extend or include for another base use case?
Yes, like this example that you are seeing, you can see that I have two base use cases. Number one is register for an account. I also have a base use case called login. And you can see that there's an include relationship between those two base use cases. can you see my screen?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the register for an account and login. They are both base use cases, but they also have a relationship.
Don't want to see you here.
And include relationship.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's fine. And I'll also connect with you on LinkedIn.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Good night, baby.
Anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Olu. I just want to say thank you to Oga Ari and everyone at NIPCA. This is my first NIPCA presentation that I'm attending, and it's been wonderful. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Olu.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Arif.
Yes.
Hi,
Hello.
good evening. Okay, like everyone has been saying, it's been a fantastic presentation. Like, I actually nudged a few of my friends to join, but I feel sad that they weren't able to join, but I'd be more than happy to tell them what they missed. But going to my question, right? I wanted to know, do you have, I wanted to know if you have, like, I know, what it is, some form of NDA, not wanting to share some of the jobs you've done, right? But I also feel that it would be nice to actually see one of your use cases that's been completed, maybe, I don't know, maybe it could be part of the things we get after the training. For instance, it interests me to actually see how you detail out the textual form of these use cases, right? Complete use cases. So I believe that would help us also learn this thing and understand better. I don't know if there's anyone you could share with us. A project you completed, just the use cases and the textual or tabular description. I believe that would also help people and also, eliminate some of the questions we have in our minds right now. I don't know if you have any of that.
Okay, yeah, I remember I said I do workshops and I offer training. So this one that you're looking at is something that I did, but it's a lot bigger and longer. This is just an extract. So give me some time. Let me put one or two things together, and I'll talk to Nitka and we'll see how it goes. But just give me some time to.
All right then. Thanks. Then another thing I wanted to quickly ask, right, is during your presentation, I also, don't you think it's compulsory to actually mention that while you're drawing your use cases, that for a user to be able to make a payment or withdraw or check balance, it has to be logged in. You can't do that in use case, right? It has to be in your what's it called, requirement. Yeah.
Yes, you can actually do that in use case, but remember that if for instance, for this particular use case now, I cannot create a travel request until I log in. So I could create and include relationship between the base use case, create travel request and login. So I could create that line and that line and that line and that line. At the end of the day, it's going to look clumsy. Remember that the developer is not developing solely based on my use case. He's actually looking at my requirements, because when the tester is testing, the test cases are based on each individual requirement. And the acceptance criteria is based on the requirements, not on the use case. The use case is high level. So what you're saying is correct. You could draw those lines, but remember that the use case cannot fully capture everything. And the details are usually in the requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Then to NIPCA, right? This one is to NIPCA. This is my first training I'm joining. Now that I've been able to register for this one, would I get subsequent training notification so I can register, so I don't get to miss out? I just stumbled on this on one of my WhatsApp groups, and that's how I got to register. So what happens going forward? Because it looks like it happens from time to time.
So the sessions are every fortnight, 2 weeks apart.
Okay.
And notification goes out well ahead of time, in advance, before the date itself. So, and this is being normally pushed out on all our social media outlets as well. So are you part of the Telegram group yet?
No, not at all. I'm not a part of that.
Okay, I'll suggest you visit the NIPCA's website, and there's a link on the website that says that takes you to where you can actually join, and in there you can put in your details, and from there the responsible team will reach out to you to fine-tune all the other steps that you need to go through. So by the time you are a part of the Telegram group as well, nothing goes behind you. Every happenings you'll be privileged to.
All right then. Thank you so much. I'll just join then. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Great work. Yeah. Bye.
Okay, NIPCA's website is straightforward. It's nipca.ca. I'm putting it in the chat. Okay, thank you, Sita.
I do have a quick question. Thank you for for this presentation. I need to know, for the workshops, is it that let's say the next 2 weeks now, we're going to be doing something like a different topic relating to another industry, or is it going to be business analyst? I don't know how it works. Like, is it different every 2 weeks?
Each session is different.
It's different.
In most. Osita, you are on mute. Each session is different.
Can you hear me?
All right, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Great work, Harry. Thanks so much for that excellent presentation. Chris and Abe, thanks so much for the wonderful moderation. So just like the lady that asked, last year we started with